Greetings from the IES Residential Education Center. I'm Jimmy Johnson. We will be learning about box fill today. We need to know about box fill for the test and also so we do not overfill our boxes. Also remember, the code is a minimum. If you have GFCIs or smart devices, you probably want a larger box. Just because it fits does not mean it will work easily. We're here today to talk about box fill, found in Article 334 inside of your codebook. Please turn there, follow along with me. Feel free to pause the video or even rewind at any point to catch any steps. We're going to start at Article 314.16b. That is going to tell us what is not included inside of box fill, which reads, no allowance shall be required for small fittings such as lock nuts and bushings. Each space installed shall be calculated separately. It's great to add a note there that this also includes wire nuts. So what is not included is lock nuts, bushings, and wire nuts. Now, in 314.16b1, that's where the real meat's going to start. Conductor fill. Each conductor that originates outside the box and is terminated or spliced within the box shall be counted once. And each conductor that passes through the box without splicing shall be counted once. Each loop or coil of unbroken conductor less than twice the minimum amount required in Article 300.14 shall be counted twice. Let's break down what that means. If I have my box right here, standard little blue box, residential, and my wire comes in, that is only going to be counted once per current carrying conductor. Grounds are going to be slightly different, but we'll get to that in a moment. But if I have, let's say, a metal 1900 box, and my wire comes in and does a little loop, that may be counted twice. Let's flip back to Article 300.14 now. Give you a moment. In Article 300.14, that states that any wire entering the box needs to be at least 6 inches long. At least. That's all saying if you have a larger box, larger than 8 inches in any direction, which is usually not the case for us. Large J boxes usually aren't the problem. You would need at least 3 inches leaving the box. So let's flip back to our 314.16. Now, from where we enter the box to where we leave, if that is twice the minimum length, which is 6 inches, so if that is 12 inches or more, it shall be counted twice. If that's only 8 inches, it will only be counted once. All right, now, clamps. Clamps are found in a lot of metal boxes. Usually what we deal with is going to be a ceiling fan box, most familiar to what we see in our day-to-day lives. It looks something like this. But when you have a clamp like this, you can enter the box without need for a bushing. Just right in with your Romex, tighten it down, it makes a good connection, you're good to go. Whenever you have, again, back to the code, one or more internal cable clamps, whether factory or field supplied, are present in the box, a single volume allowance. So it doesn't matter. One or more equals one allowance. And that allowance is going to be based off of the largest wire in the box. Largest wire I'm going to call LW. We'll get to that later. So if you have one clamp, it counts for one LW. If you have two clamps, still equals 1 LW largest wire, even if you have 100 clamps. Then, man, if you have 100 clamps in your box, you really don't have any room for wire. But according to this book right now, as written, it will only count for 1 largest wire. Probably going to have a tough time fitting all those GFCIs in there, but hey, code doesn't say it's going to fit, it's going to say it's allowable. Now, when it comes to supports or fittings, where one or more luminaire stud or one or more hickeys where one or more luminaire studs or hickeys are present in the box, a single volume allowance in accordance with 31416B shall be made for each type of fitting based off the largest conductor present. So even though this is the same article, all of your clamps would count for 1 largest wire. All of your luminaire studs would count for 1 of the largest wire, and all of your hickeys count for 1 of the largest wire. So if you had all 3 of these inside of a box, that would count for 3 largest wires. They are all individual, they all count separately. Now, equipment grounding conductors, or just ground. This is something that has changed in the 2020 book, but for the most part, in our small calculations, it is not going to matter. We'll go over these changes more in more advanced box fill videos coming up. But for right now, when you have up to 4 grounds, they're all going to count for 1 LW. And unless you have more than 4 grounds entering that box, that's all you need to do. And again, pigtails or wires coming from a wire nut do not count. So no matter how many pigtails you have, that does not count towards your 4. This is, when it comes to Romex, 4 individual grounds coming into the box. When it comes to conduit, you only have 1 ground per conduit, if that, and you would only have to count them all per 1. Unless you have more than 4 grounds entering that box, this is all you need to do. Alright, next, moving through in order is going to be table 314.16a, metal boxes. We're not going to go too deep into how to read a table. That's been covered in other videos. However, for this one, if I had a, let's come up with an example, a 4x4 by 1.5 inch box. Well, I could do my lengths times widths times height, pausing, doing math, calling Robbie, simple addition, need some help. If I just do that simple calculation right now, I would get 24 inches cubed. However, that's not what you want to do in this situation. You want to go to this table, and it may be hard to find a 4x4 by 1.5 inch box, but this is a 4-inch square box times 1.5 inches. So I'm close to the top. I can trace that over, and I can see I can fit 10 number 14s. Or I could fit 9 number 12s. Inside of this box. This also says that for this box, I only have 21 inches. inches cubed. So if you wanted to find anything else out, if you had a mixed box, if you had a lot of different wires inside there, you would have to go to this next table. Table 31416B. So a lot of great wires on here. The most common ones we're going to deal with is going to be 14, 12s, and 10s. We're going to worry about our cubic inches. For a 14 gauge wire, looking down on this chart, tracing it over, that is going to be 2 cubic inches each. For number 12, that is going to be 2 1/4. For number 10, that's going to be 2 1/2 cubic inches each per wire. That is the basics in the box fill. Stick around, we'll go through a couple examples. So for my first question here, in this example, I have two 10-2 Romex with ground. I have one 14-2 Romex with a ground. I have one receptacle connected to number 14s. That's it. So looking at this question right here, what is that 10 gauge wire connected to? Well, you may say that this is just a pigtail inside of the box. Maybe there was a cut wire and they decided to put it right behind a dead end outlet. There's only one 14 in there. Let's see what type of box would we need in this situation. Do we need a standard box? Do we need a deeper box? But all that this question is breaking down is how many cubic inches do I need for that box? It's not asking you anything crazy. We just have to work out what we need. So in order to do this, I like to make a little table for new guys starting out. Starts with size, wire, number of, the multiplier, and the inches cubed. So starting off for my 10-2, that is obviously going to be size 10 AUG wire. Now I need to know how many current carrying conductors do I have. So I'm not going to count the ground. We always do that at the end just to keep things simple. So if I have a 10 gauge wire and I have 10-2, that means there are 2 current carrying conductors inside of here. And if I have 2 of them, I'm going to multiply that by 2. That's going to give me a total of 4 conductors. Number of will be 4. I'm going back to my table, 31416B for a 10 gauge wire. Looks like I'm going to need to multiply that by 2.5, giving me a total of 10 inches cubed. Now next, I'm going to have my 14-2. I have one number, it's again 14 gauge wire. I have one 14-2. 14-2 has black and a white wire. That's going to be 2 of them inside there without counting the ground. For a 14 gauge wire, back to my table, multiplier is going to be 2. That's going to give me a total of 4 inches cubed. Now this receptacle, what's important here is it's connected to the 14 gauge wire. Remember earlier, when we have a device, it counts for 2 of the largest wires connected to that device. Because there's no 10 gauge wire connected to it, we're going to count that as 14. A receptacle is a device that has 1 yoke, so that's going to count for 2 wires. 14 gauge multiplier is going to be times 2, which again is giving me 4 inches cubed. This is a step a lot of people forget, to add their largest ground, LG. The largest ground in this box will be a number 10 gauge wire. No matter all the grounds in here, because we have 2 wires entering here, 1 wire entering here, we only have 3 wires entering this box. We don't have to worry about the 2020 code change, so we can multiply that by 1. Number 10 is going to be at 2.5 according to that table, which is going to equal 2.5 inches cubed, giving me a total of 20.5 inches cubed. That's it. That's all they're asking for. Really simple when you break it down. If you made a mistake, perfectly fine. There's always a lot of steps to this. If you're struggling, if you're new, highly recommend making a little table like this. Okay. Moving down to the next example. I have 1 fluorescent strip fixture. And we're going to have 2 14-2 Romex with ground. We're going to have 2 clamps. So, if you feel confident, go ahead and pause the video right here, work on this, and then we'll check back in. If not, feel free to stick around. We'll cover it together no matter what. All right, so moving forward, we're going to make a little table and a chart again. So, because this is a light fixture, even if it has fixture wires coming out of it, we do not count it. It does not enter the box. It is information you do not need. Finally, for my 2 14-2s, again, I have 2 of them, and there are 2 current carrying conductors inside of here. Size is going to be 14, and there's going to be 4 of them. The multiplier for a 14 gauge wire is still going to be 2, giving me a total of 8 inches cubed. The 2 clamps only count for 1 allowance. The largest wire inside this box is a 14. That's what we're going to do. It's only going to be 1. It's going to give me a total of 2. Now the next step, again, some people like to forget, is you still have the largest ground, which is still going to be a 14 gauge wire. There's 1 of them. Give me a total of 12 cubed. If you got that, great. If you made a mistake, perfectly fine. Important thing is to learn from it and see these little tiny steps. Now I'm going to show you guys another way of working out a problem. If I have 20 amp GFCI with 12 amp load. If I have 3-way switch, 12-3 Romex, 12-2 Romexes. What I'm looking at here is I'm seeing GFCI, as we all know, is much larger than a switch. However, when it comes to box fill, they each have one yoke and shall be counted for 2 wires. We know in the real world, maybe when you have a GFCI and a couple of wires behind there, you might want to make it a deep box just in case, make sure everything fits. When it comes to code, it's just saying what's allowed. You're allowed to, because box fill is more about heat. So looking at this question right here, I see everything is a 12 gauge wire. Now we can check back to that table and see a 12 gauge wire is 2 1/4 allowances each. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to make that box this time. We're going to count out the number of current carrying conductors we have. So because this first one is going to be a device, that will count as 2 wires. 3-way switch is again a device, will count for 2 wires. 1 12-3 is going to count for 3 wires. 2 12-2s count for 4 wires. And always forget the LG shall count for 1 wire. Give me a total of 12 wires. Now, if every 12 gauge wire is taken at 2 1/4 because of table 31416b, that is going to give me a total of 27 inches cubed. This works great when all of your wires are the same size. However, if you're still struggling at box fill, missing a step, it definitely is a lot cleaner and easier for newer guys to draw out the box every time. Remember, speed will come. Once you get there, you can feel free to use your own ways as long as you're getting the right answer. And that's all for box fill. Hope you guys have a great evening, and I'll see you next time.